Okay, let's do a newspaper for today. You can get a lot of interesting vocabulary from the newspapers, but sometimes there are mistakes, and so let's always bear that in mind. So, COVID vaccines may have helped fuel rise in excess deaths. Experts call for more research into side effects and possible links to mortality rates. Remember, side effects are bad effects. They are adverse reactions to medicine. And any medicine will have side effects. It will have adverse reactions. They all do. So this is by Sarah Napton, the science editor of the Daily Telegraph. This is one of the biggest newspapers in the UK. COVID vaccines could be partly to blame for the rise in excess deaths since the pandemic, scientists have suggested. Researchers from the Netherlands analysed data from 47 Western countries and discovered there had been more than 3 million excess deaths since 2020, with the trend continuing despite the rollout of vaccines and containment measures. And of course, by containment measures, they mean locking people in their homes. Among other things, as well as, for example, not being allowed to go to work, that kind of thing. They said the unprecedented figures raised serious concerns and called on governments to fully investigate the underlying causes, including possible vaccine harms. Okay, now remember, when you call on somebody to do something, you demand that they do something because it needs to be done, okay? Writing in the British medical journal Public Health, the authors from Vrije University, Amsterdam, said, although COVID-19 vaccines were provided to guard civilians from suffering morbidity and mortality by the COVID-19 virus, suspected adverse events, that's adverse reactions, side effects, have been documented as well. Both medical professionals and citizens have reported serious injuries and deaths, deaths, you see that there? Deaths following vaccination to various official databases in the Western world. They added, during the pandemic, it was emphasised by politicians and the media on a daily basis that every COVID-19 death mattered and every life deserved protection through containment measures like lockdown and COVID-19 vaccines. In the aftermath of the pandemic, now remember this, in the aftermath of something, it's a very useful phrase and it's very common, and we mean as a result of the pandemic, after the pandemic, aftermath means after something. So in the aftermath of the pandemic means after the pandemic. The same moral should apply. Now, I read a version earlier which said morale, and that was wrong, so I'm glad they've changed it, because certainly on one of the other news sites they'd used the wrong word there, but they have changed it just now by the looks of it, because I swear I saw a different word 5 minutes ago. But this is correct. The same moral should apply. We should also be worried about every single death, and anybody who has suffered due to the containment measures or the vaccines, well, that we should worry about them, and we should focus that every death matters. Everybody matters. The study found that across Europe, the US and Australia, there had been more than 1 million excess deaths in 2020 at the height of the pandemic, but even more, 1.2 million in 2021 and 800,000 in 2022 after measures were implemented. So this is after the vaccines were implemented and after the containment measures were implemented. Researchers said the figure included deaths from COVID-19, but also the indirect effects of the health strategies to address the virus spread and infection. They warned that side effects linked to the COVID vaccine had included ischemic stroke, acute coronary syndrome and brain hemorrhage, cardiovascular diseases, coagulation, hemorrhages, gastrointestinal events and blood clotting. Now, here is a little diagram showing you how risky the AstraZeneca vaccine was, and it was not as risky as giving birth, but certainly riskier than a general anaesthetic and a number of other activities. German researchers have pointed out that the onset, now there's a good word, the onset of something means the start of something, when something sets in. The onset of a disease is when it starts, it's when the disease starts to take effect. So German researchers have pointed out that the onset of excess mortality in early 2021 in the country coincided with the rollout of vaccines, which the team said warranted further investigation. However, more recent data regarding side effects has not been made available to the public. Strange. With countries keeping their own individual databases of harms. Okay, so we're not sharing with other countries, which rely on self-reporting by the public and doctors, the experts warned. Doesn't sound like the best way. Delays to other treatments. Researchers said that it was likely that the impact of containment measures, restricted healthcare and socio-economic upheaval during the pandemic had contributed to deaths, although accepted that this was difficult to prove. Gordon Wishart, Chief Medical Officer at Check for Cancer and visiting Professor of Cancer Surgery at Anglia Ruskin University, warned repeatedly that delaying cancer diagnosis would lead to deaths. It was predicted early in the lockdown period that limited access to healthcare for non-COVID conditions like cancer would lead to delays in the diagnosis and treatment of time-critical conditions such as cancer, cardiac disease, diabetes and dementia, and that this would lead to excess deaths from these conditions. NHS England data shows that per 100,000 people, the cancer incidence was 521 in the pre-lockdown year, then fell to 456 in 2020 to 2021, suggesting around 45,000 cancers were missed in the first pandemic year because of the containment measures. The incidence rate rose to 540 per 100,000 the following year, suggesting many cancers were diagnosed late when treatment would be far less effective. Speaking about the potential for vaccine harm, Mr. Wishart added, "The authors are correct to point out that many vaccine-related serious adverse events may have been unreported," very true, and point to the fact that the simultaneous onset of excess mortality and COVID vaccination in Germany is worthy of further investigation on its own. The paper provides more questions than answers, but it is hard to disagree with their conclusion that further analysis is required to understand the underlying causes of excess mortality to better prepare for the future management of pandemic crises, and that's the plural of crisis. Yeah, you change the IS to an ES and you've got the plural.